You see the flashing numbers and charts of the global financial markets, right? Well, behind all of that, there's this massive invisible system. It's kind of like the nervous system that regulators use to track risk and hopefully prevent economic crises. Today, we're going to map out that very system, trade reporting.
I mean, just think about that for a second. It's a staggering question. Every single day, trillions of dollars worth of complex derivatives change hands all over the world. So how on earth can anyone keep track of it all? How do you see where the risk is building up? The scale of it feels almost impossible to manage.
So what's the answer? Well, in theory, it's actually pretty simple. You build a system based on total transparency, a system where every single trade gets logged, tracked, and made visible to the people who need to see it. The idea is simple, but as you're about to see, making it happen is anything but.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll dive into that fundamental rule, the reporting obligation. Then, we're going to follow the data itself on its digital journey. After that, we'll get into the real high-stakes puzzle of making this all work under insane pressure. And we'll wrap up with the key pillars that hold the whole thing together. Right, so let's start at the very beginning with the reporting obligation. This is the absolute bedrock of the entire system. It defines exactly who has to report and what information they need to hand over. The main character in this whole story is the Trade Repository, or TR for short. Just think of it like a giant, super secure library for financial trades. It's the official, authorized hub that collects and holds on to all these records, so regulators can come in and check them out. Okay, so who is actually responsible for getting the books into this library? Well, the law is pretty clear. Both sides of a trade, say two big banks, are legally required to report it. But you can probably guess, reporting the exact same trade twice would just create a mess. So in practice, the two sides usually just agree that one of them will handle the reporting. It's a simple, practical solution to keep things clean. And what exactly are they reporting? Well, it really boils down to three key things. First up is counterparty data. That's the who, using a unique code to identify everyone involved. Then you have the transaction data, the what, all the nitty-gritty details like the amount, price, and so on. And finally, and this is important, the life cycle events. See, trades aren't just a one-and-done deal. They change over time. Any major updates have to be reported too. So we know who reports and what they report. But the big question is, how does that information actually get from a bank's internal computer systems all the way to that trade repository? Let's follow the data on its incredible digital journey. You know, for a global system like this to even have a chance of working, everybody has to be speaking the same language. Digitally, that is. That's why the whole thing leans so heavily on global data standards. These standards make sure that a report from a bank in London looks exactly the same as one from Tokyo. It creates a universal language that everyone can understand. And this pipeline here shows you exactly how it works. First, the data gets pulled together from all over the bank. Then it gets translated into that standard universal format we just talked about. After that, it gets stamped with a unique trade identifier, or UTI. You can think of it like a FedEx tracking number for the trade. Then it's submitted automatically. And finally, and this part is key, the trade repository checks the data and sends back a message flagging any errors that need to be fixed. Now, this might all sound pretty neat and tidy, like a smooth-running machine, but the reality? It's more like a high-stakes puzzle. These institutions are constantly juggling a massive volume of data, incredible speed, and an absolute non-negotiable need for accuracy. I mean, just try to wrap your head around the complexity here. We're not talking about a handful of data points. A single trade, just one, can have hundreds of different pieces of information that all have to be captured perfectly. Okay, and if that wasn't enough, here's where the pressure really gets turned up. All of that incredibly complex data has to be reported by T+1. The T stands for the trade day, which means everything is due by the end of the very next business day. For a process this complicated, that is a crazy tight deadline. So you can imagine the tech running this whole show has to be absolutely top-notch. It needs three things. It has to be agile enough to change on a dime when regulations get updated. It has to be scalable to handle huge amounts of data. And it needs the raw performance to hit those brutal T+1 deadlines day in and day out. And here's the bottom line, right? There is absolutely zero room for error. Getting the data wrong isn't just a simple mistake or a technical glitch. No, it's a regulatory failure, and it can lead to some seriously painful fines. All right, so that brings us to our final section,
With all this complexity and all these high stakes, what does it actually take to pull this off successfully? Well, it really all comes down to three essential pillars.
And here they are. First, you've got the technology, those agile, scalable systems we just talked about. Second, the process. You need automated checks to find errors before the report goes out the door. And third, you have the people. You need your tech, compliance, and operations teams all working together seamlessly. You can't have one without the others. They all have to be in perfect sync. And that's really the key takeaway here. This super technical, data-heavy process, it's not just about ticking boxes for the regulators. It is the fundamental building block for transparency. It's about managing risk across the entire system. And ultimately, it's about building trust and stability in the global economy. Which leaves us with one last thought to chew on. The markets are only getting faster and the products are only getting more complex. So the real challenge for everyone involved is how do we make sure this digital map of the market doesn't just keep up, but actually stays one step ahead of the game?